In today's show, the Blazers still have stuff at stake heading into the final 2 games of the regular season. Plus, we dig into the largest single-season win improvements in franchise history. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's program, we're going to talk about the final 2 games of the regular season. You're listening to Friday, April 11th show, and the Blazers kick off their final weekend of the regular season against the Golden State Warriors on Friday evening, and then a Sunday afternoon game against the Lakers to wrap things up, games 80 and 81 at the Moda Center. And there is still stuff to play for. It might be stuff to lose for at this point, but there is still things to be decided for Portland and obviously across the rest of the Western Conference playoff standings for teams that have won more games this year than your beloved Pinwheels. Plus, I want to dig into the largest increases in wins over a single season. The Blazers are about to take a minimum 14-game jump, depending on what happens this weekend. That's a pretty big deal in the history of the franchise. Rarely have they made this level of improvement. I want to dig into the few times that it has happened and trace back exactly why those things happen. And if there's any lessons, this current iteration can learn from past versions of itself. We will join, you can join me in the somewhat way back machine to close the show. Let's start here though. There's stuff that's going to happen. Friday against the Warriors, they're going to play basketball games, and they are, in the grand scheme of things, largely meaningless, right? You get to this time of year and there are so many teams that don't need to play for a variety of reasons. Some teams don't need to play because they're very heavily incentivized to lose to protect those precious lottery odds. And there's some teams that don't need to play because they have playoff seeding locked up, and all they need to do, like the number one thing they need to do, is be healthy next weekend. The Blazers are obviously, they're out of the play-in. They are not playing for postseason or anything like that, but there are lottery odds to be decided. And I think the best case scenario for the Blazers is they could, I don't think this is the best case scenario. If San Antonio wins their final 2 games and the Blazers lose their final 2 games, the Blazers could fall down in the standings such that they would end up tied with San Antonio for the 8th worst record in the league and the 8th best lottery odds, and then they would split those odds, and the remaining combo would be decided by a coin flip. Currently, the Blazers are tied with the lowly Phoenix Suns at 35 and 45. Portland could finish as high as tied for the 8th best odds or drop all the way down to 10th, depending on the outcome of this weekend's games. So while I'm not going to just say like they gotta lose, must lose, I will say this, and I've tried to be consistent over in my opinion here. I do think fans being incentivized to root for their team to lose, to watch a game like the Blazers had against the Jazz, and the Jazz fans watch their teams win and be like, oh, dang. And the Blazers fans watch their team lose in overtime with some intention put behind that losing and say, yes, they did it. It's just so perverse, right? That's just like not how it should be, but it is how it is. How it works in the modern NBA. So, I don't love it, but I accept where we are currently. I will live in our unfortunate times in so many ways beyond basketball, y'all. In any case, here's what's ahead for the Blazers. How could they get all the way up to 8th? How could they end up in 10th? Let's look at who's playing who and what's at stake for everybody. The Western Conference standings 4 through 8 are so crowded and so fun. It's like there's a lot going on. That's exciting, but the rest of it is pretty much decided. 9-10 is decided, but they got to figure out whether it's going to be Dallas or whether it's going to be Dallas or Sacramento hosting that game. But San Antonio at 33 and 47, fresh off an upset win on a buzzer beater by Harrison Barnes. Where'd he go to college? Over the Warriors are still on the road. They play Phoenix, and that's a meaningful game for the Blazers on Friday evenings. Spurs at Suns. The Suns are they have burned out. They are the heat death of the universe. Kevin Durant's not coming back. If he were going to have come back, he would have come back in their last game because he would have been eligible for All NBA and postseason awards if he had played in the final 3 games because of the way the league rules works. It works. He didn't play in those games, so he's done. Phoenix has lost 9 in a row. Their season's done. They're a mess. They're headed for an implosion this summer. Who knows what will happen, but I imagine it will be drastic, whatever is coming in the desert. I can't imagine that I don't think they'll like outright tank, right? Because their season's been over, but they lose anyways because they're no good and they play with no heart. So we shall see what comes of that game. Someone in a meaningful way has to win. I think for the Blazers, here is your best case scenario. Phoenix wins. I think that's your best bet. I think Phoenix wins, San Antonio loses, and then you just hope that the Blazers still could lose both and leapfrog Phoenix. But I think that's what you're rooting for on Friday night. I think you're rooting for a Phoenix Suns victory at home against the Spurs. Of course, I don't have any faith in the Suns winning that game. I don't. So I think San Antonio will probably win because they haven't really been tanking. They're just injured and they're playing kind of their young guys and playing a bit of a larger rotation. But they're not like out and out. They play their good players at the end of the games, right? They're not doing stuff that other teams across the league are doing. So I kind of think I think San Antonio will win that game, which is, it doesn't line up perfectly for the Blazers, but that's still a potential positive scenario for them. The San Antonio's last game of the regular season was a home game against the Raptors. The Raptors are a team deeply committed to losing. There's a real chance that San Antonio wins their final 2 games. They're a team that just wins. Last year they did it against Denver at the end of the season. They won a game they really didn't need to, but they upset the Nuggets, and it kind of ruined the Nuggets' path away in the playoffs a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if San Antonio does go 2-0 in the final weekend and ends up with 35 wins. Phoenix, I got no faith in. I don't know what they'll do at home against San Antonio. By the end of the last game of the season is at Sacramento. This Phoenix Suns team on the road to end the year, they're not winning. They're not winning. They're cooked. Sacramento has a little bit to play for. They are a game ahead of Dallas for the 9th seed. And to host that first play-in game. But Sacramento also has the tiebreaker over Dallas, so there is a chance that by the time you get to Sunday afternoon, and all the games tip off at the same time on Sunday to avoid some shenanigans across the league. The shenanigans happen in the first 81 games, but no shenanigans in the final one, or at least no like planned scoreboard watching based shenanigans. There's a chance that Sacramento will already have 9th wrapped up. They will already say, hey, there's nothing that can happen. The tiebreaker is what it is. But there is a chance that Sacramento really needs to win, and that the Spurs would be in big trouble, or excuse me, the Suns would be in big trouble. I do think the Suns are going to lose out. That is my guess, is the Suns lose out. So what does that mean for the Blazers? They play Golden State. Golden State's desperate for a win. Golden State could climb as high as 4th, could fall as low as 8th, particularly after that loss to the Spurs, puts them in a little bit of jeopardy. Golden State desperately needs to win on Friday nights. The Blazers are like moderately interested in playing competitive games, but not particularly invested in winning basketball games. So I think you could chalk that up as an L. That one's a pretty obvious one. Sunday is a little bit interesting against the Lakers. Final home game of the regular season, right? Like there might be some like organizational good vibes pride and like, hey, let's not do something nefarious and shameless in order to lose this game, right? They might play it out a little more legitimately because it's in front of the home crowd and it's quote unquote fan appreciation. That has certainly not stopped them in the past. Do not bank on it, but I think that is something to note. The Lakers need 1 win to clinch 3rd. They play the Rockets on Friday evening. The Rockets have already clinched 2nd. They rested their players in their last game. So you can assume that Houston, even if they don't rest everybody, will play at least guys limited minutes, an extended look for the end of their bench. They're incentivized very much so to stay healthy for next week. Like that's the most important thing Houston can do. So the Lakers might wrap up 3rd on Friday evening in Houston, which means the Sunday would be truly meaningless for them and that we might not see Luka or LeBron at all. I think that's a fairly likely scenario heading into Sunday's game is that the Lakers won't have anything to play for, and the Blazers can they find a way to lose? So I think heading into this weekend, there is a chance that the Blazers, they go 1-1 and end up with 36 wins. San Antonio can't get to 36 wins. I can't imagine Phoenix winning both games and getting to 37. That's outrageous. So I think the most likely scenario is a world in which the Blazers find a way to lose both games and they end up with 35 wins. Phoenix loses both games and ends up with 35 wins, and San Antonio splits at 34. And that would put San Antonio at 8 and the Blazers and Suns tied at 9-10. There is a world in which Phoenix loses out, the Blazers split their games, and the Blazers end up at 10th. That would be a bummer for the way the season went. In some ways, you can't control how bad the Suns are, but you like a team that has been so, let's say, lottery-oriented over the last couple years, finishing with the 10th best lottery odds this year would be a fairly big surprise, and I think like not a positive outcome, although there has been other things that have been positive outcomes, but particularly their final seeding, I think you could note was not a particularly positive outcome for how things come. But so I think, the worst is outright 10th. The best is tied for 8th. Tied for 8th seems pretty darn unlikely. Worst seems on the table. And I think the most likely outcome is probably that the Blazers and Suns finish with the same record. Both losers of their final 2 games, which means they would be tied in that 9-10 spot. They would each have, because you split the odds and coin flip for the remaining combo and who's, if neither team makes the lottery where you are in the draft order, neither team wins the lottery where you are in the draft order. The Blazers would end up in a 9-10 split scenario with a 17% chance of getting a top 4 pick and a 3.75% chance at getting the number 1 overall pick. That's what is at stake this weekend. I don't think you have to worry too much about the Blazers winning on Friday night, thanks in part to the Spurs, probably waking up the Warriors a little bit, but certainly that's on the table. And Sunday's game will be a very interesting test of like, what do the Blazers do against a hated rival Lakers, at least in terms of like fan hatred, a hated rival Lakers on fan appreciation night at home, the final game of the season? What lengths are they willing to go? Okay, let's talk about the Blazers' improvement this year, because even if they don't win any more games, they've won 14 more games than a year ago. At a minimum, a 14-game increase year over year, one of the biggest jumps in franchise history. Let's talk about the franchise history and what it means to take a major jump, and some teams that have done it in the past. Join me in that second segment, won't you? First, though, let's talk DoorDash. If you're watching games this week and if someone scores 50 points, just know that they swoosh. You save because Dash Pass is hooking you up. Every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you can score a huge deal the next day. Here's how it works. During the regular season, which only has a weekend left in it, there's actually I'm recording during the Thursday evening games. None of them have major implications for the Blazers, but if this could happen tonight, and if you check the box score, just know DoorDash will hook it up if you are a Dash Pass member. You get 50% off of an order up to $10 the next day from noon to midnight, or for my West Coast listeners, 9 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. So whether that's, the next morning when you find out about the game and you want to order brunch or lunch, you can do so with 0 delivery fees and reduced service fees. Plus, now you save even more with this exclusive NBA offer. You can also do a late night craving. Say you're watching a game this weekend, somebody drops 50 in the final weekend. You can hit up DoorDash, but what you got to do is you got to sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save. When any player scores that 50 points, it's go time. You could save 50% off your order the next day if you use that promo code NBA50 after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. All right. So the Blazers, if nothing else, will have dramatically improved their win-loss record from a season ago. A 21-win team last year wins 35 games. Their over-under on FanDuel heading into the season was 21.5. Take that, FanDuel. Thanks for sponsoring the show, but take that. 21.5. The Blazers crushed it. They crushed it because they got competent and pretty darn decent in the second half of the season. A baseline of good defense allowed them to just take care of business. When they played bad teams, they beat them because they found a way to be competent enough to just smash teams that aren't very good. They also squeaked by some teams that aren't very good, but the beginning of their run, what they were really doing was smashing teams that weren't very good. That's the sign of, point differential is a very good indicator of quality teams. That I don't know if that point differential held up through the remainder of the season, but certainly when they took off in January, it was like, yeah, they're beating everybody who's not very good, but they're also beating them by a lot. There was a stretch where you kind of said hey, this is something that looks like they've figured it out. And I think certainly that's the theme of the season. How much have they figured it out, right? There's obvious positives. The improvement of the young players, Denny Avdia's breakout, Tumani's development, the young players being the recent lottery picks. They got obviously they have many moves to go before they're like a consistent contender, right? I'm not trying to sell you on that, but I do think that they've taken enough positive steps forward this season to feel like to end the year, and we'll talk about this more on Monday's program. You listen to Friday, April 11th program, and on Monday we'll wrap up the whole season. It's like, I think there's a lot of reasons to say like, yeah, this was a good one. This was a good one, and here's the reasons to feel good about it. In fact, I think this was one of the more rewarding seasons in recent past. But it is also relatively historic. It is only the fourth time in franchise history, excluding lockout years, apologies to the 1999 lockout, the Blazers won 70% of their games last year, and then they won a bunch more the next season because they played 32 more games during the regular season. But this is just the fifth time in franchise history that they have increased their win total by 13 or more games. The first one was back in from 86 to 87, the following year in 87 to 88, as sort of Clyde Drexler got rolling, and they started to build a good basketball team. In the next time it came up, and we'll talk about this more in depth, was from 89-90 from 88-89 to the 89-90 season, the first year that they made the finals. They took a big leap, a 20-game leap. In 07-08 to 08-09, they won 13 more games as the Brandon Roy era and LaMarcus Aldridge era sort of crystallized at its peak before quickly dissipating. And then the last time it happened, in 2012-2013 season, was from the 2012-2013 season to the following year, 2013-14, was Damian Lillard's second year when they won 21 more games. But in that Damian Lillard rookie season, they lost 13 games. Like, they lost to end the year, they dropped 13 straight games. I believe LaMarcus Aldridge quite literally went to Cancun, and they finished the season, without their best player, and they had the rookie of the year, the unanimous rookie of the year in Damian Lillard, but they just they weren't ready. And then that season was the following season they kind of took off. What I want to focus on here to close out the show is the takeoff part, because if you look at this season, it's like, why did the Blazers get so much better? Well, Shaedon Sharpe was healthy, so instead of having an up and down sophomore season where he was, going through the growing pains of being a young basketball player and hurt a lot, and just didn't play, missed 50 games, you get him for virtually the whole year. Scoot Henderson went from being one of the worst, big minute contributors in the league to being for a stretch, straight up really good. He was at least in terms of on-court impact. I don't know if his individual numbers, I think they certainly improved, but in terms of on-court impact, there was a stretch for 2 months where it's when Scoot plays, the Blazers do darn well. And then that's I think that's a pretty good sign for a player. I'm not a big on-off numbers zealot, but one of the reasons the Blazers got better is because Scoot Henderson went from oh no to being pretty helpful to being legitimately helpful every night he played for a stretch. And then I think before he got hurt, kind of closed on a little rockier level, but took a real step forward. The addition of Donovan Clingan, who didn't play a bunch early, but is such a stabilizing defensive presence. Even if he's no good on offense, which right now I think he's straight up no good on offense, Donovan Clingan helps because of how good he already is on defense as a not yet 21-year-old, or excuse me, as a recently turned 21-year-old. All of those youngsters taking a step helps. Toumani Camara morphing from good 3-and-D player who shot well for 35 games to being a dude who shoots 37% from three all season and defends at an all defense level. That's a huge step. And Deni Avdija, the acquisition of Deni Avdija, just propelled this team forward. Once he found his footing about a month into the season, he was darn good. And then post All-Star break and in what some call Mickey Mouse March. I don't know if I co-sign on that, but to close the season, Avdija was all-star level good with his production. I've said a bunch, say it again. The way you make an all-star team is you do it at the beginning of the season. Deni Avdija plays like that at the beginning of the season, he will make the all-star team. If he's a 23-9-5 player for a team that wins half their games, Deni Avdija either will make the All-Star team or he'll get on a whole bunch of lists of how did Deni Avdija not make the All-Star team. If he produces like that, it'll take care of itself. All of those things contributed to it. I would be remiss if I didn't say I think the best stretch of DeAndre Ayton's Blazers' career, his 2 seasons, was during the beginning of that win streak in the middle of January. He just got hurt right before the All-Star break, and so then it was short. It was a month, but he was good during that stretch. Anthony Simons, I think, had a down year, but was part of some positive moments. But I wouldn't say that's the thing that changed. The change was the youngsters. The change was Denny and Tumani. So how do they do it again? Well, why don't we look back to look forward? Back in the summer of 1989 and again in the summer of 2013, when the Blazers won 20 more games and then 21 more games, however many 30 years later, let's look at 25 years later. Let's look at those seasons and the trends and what went down in those seasons. And if the Blazers, because if they're going to be good, right, the Blazers don't just win 14 more games this year. They do it again next season, right? They go from a 35 win team to a 45, 49, 48 win team. Let's look back to look forward. How did those teams get it done? And can this version of the Blazers replicate any of those lessons learned? Join me in the third segment, won't ya? First, though, let's talk Game Time. 2 Blazer games remaining, and Game Time wants to hook it up. They want you to go to a live basketball game so you can soak up the excitement one final time, or if you're really into it, 2 final times before the Blazers are done until the fall. Finding a great seat at a great price, that used to be a challenge until Game Time came around. Game Time makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever, and just tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer, so you're listening to Friday's show. It's going to come out in your audio feeds Thursday night and your YouTube feed on early Friday morning. And if you're patient, you can save some money going to these basketball games. The Warriors on Friday night. You can get into the arena right now on Game Time, and I'm recording this well before it comes out, 4 or 5 hours before it drops. You can get into the building for $55. You can sit downstairs in the 200 level for under $100, $97 right now on the Game Time app. That's what they do. They find you good tickets quickly. So all you got to do is pull up your phone, look at that picture of the Moda Center, and you'll scan quickly to find great deals. That's what they do. Plus, priority last minute deals. Be patient. Save up to 60% off buying last minutes for sporting events and for your Portland Trailblazers. And find their zone deals, which will even have more specific deals to help you save your money. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. You save even a little bit more money. Terms apply. And again, you use the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. And you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. So when I was preparing for this segment, I was struck by the jumps of sort of signature moments in team history. Like the eras kind of took off at these times, and the team went from, not very good and to good and sustained success. Obviously, the Drexler era had a lot more higher level sustained success than the Blazers with Damian Lillard and LaMarcus Aldridge. But that they broke in that 2013-2014 season. They broke a whatever it was 14-year playoff series win drought. They hadn't made the second round of the playoffs in over a decade. So the jump coincided with also reaching heights you had. And obviously in 1990, when the Blazers increased their win total by 20, they made the freaking NBA Finals. So that was a little bit different. But let's look back, starting with the summer of 1989, to what transpired to allow them to take that jump, and whether the Blazers of this vintage can learn anything. Summer of 89, Blazers are coming off a 39-win season in which they fired their coach, and for the final 35 games, Rick Adelman becomes the head coach and guides the team into the second half of the season and into the summer. So, the Blazers had been better the prior season. They took a step back due to a variety of reasons. When that happens, coaches lose their job. They get the right guy, Chemeketa Community College's own. And the Blazers go from 39 wins to 59 wins. So how'd they do it? One, new coach, right? The new coach, new vision, Hall of Fame, great coach, right? That is incredibly helpful. Even as someone like me who thinks coaching is only a small part of the equation, it's still part of the equation, and winning that part of the equation every night matters. It's not that coaching doesn't matter. That's not what I think. I just think it matters less than talent. Talent is going to win out in the NBA. You get the right coach, it makes talent look better. But they also did two things. One, and first and foremost, they traded for an all-star. A thrice all-star, Buck Williams joins the team. They trade a first-round pick and Sam Bowie, and they land Buck. And Buck was a game changer. In fact, Buck, who did not make the all-star team that season, Clyde Drexler was the Blazers all-star representative, but Buck finished higher in the MVP voting at the end of the year than Clyde did in 1990. Buck was the guy that changed the direction. They went from this is a good basketball team to this is a team that can win the title. And Buck was that guy. So not only do you get the right coach, but you trade for talent, a massive talent upgrade, trading for a former All-Star, a 3-time All-Star in Buck Williams. They also added in the second round that year, Cliff Robinson. Nail a draft pick. Absolutely nail a draft pick. That's gonna help. Trade for an All-Star. Nail even a late round draft pick and trade for an all-star. That is one of the paths. Sorry, it takes 3 steps there in the summer of 89. New coach, he was hired before that, but it's like first year as a new coach, absolutely nail a late draft pick, trade for an all-star. Bing bang boom. Now all of a sudden you're a championship team. You're a last second shot in I believe game 4 away from like maybe winning the championship. I even think the next season where they didn't make the finals, I think that's the best iteration of that era of Blazers. In the following year, they got shrugged by MJ. But like they were championship level good for 3 consecutive seasons. The certainly the most sustained success they've ever had. Started by, really ushered in by acquiring an all-star level player. That's a good move. But what did they do in 2013, the summer of 2013, to kind of like take the next steps? Well, they had drafted the rookie of the year before. Damian Lillard was really good, right? He was the guy they needed. The Kings did them a solid and took T-Rob at 5. Shout out to Thomas Robinson. And the Blazers, Dame fell into their lap at a position of need, the point guard of the future that they had been searching for years. If you're old enough to remember the days of point guard of the future, there were many iterations until Dame arrived. And then it was obvious from like literally his first game of his NBA career against Steve Nash and Dwight and Kobe and Pau Gasol. I was like, oh yeah. This dude's really good. They're going to be just fine with him on the roster. So he wins Rookie of the Year. They end the season on a 13-game slide, so it's maybe a little overstated how many more wins. But they went from a 33-win team to a 54-win team. That's a huge jump. 39 to 59 is huge because 59 wins, like approaching 60 wins, is like. That's what champions do, right? That's what champions do. 54 wins, there was nothing to scoff at in 2014. That's an awesome roster. So some of what they just did was they let Damian Lillard continue to blossom, right? They said, okay, well, you're Rookie of the Year last year. What are you going to do? What's your encore? Well, in year 2, he made the All-Star team. He was 3rd-team All-NBA. So you could argue by making 3rd-team All-NBA that he was considered one of the top 6 players at his position in his second season, and he made an All-Star team. Internal development. They let a good young player, a player who'd always proved he was good, just go ahead and get better. Bang. Now all of a sudden they got 2 All-Stars. And if you have 2 All-Stars, you can compete. You can win 54 games. You're a darn good basketball team. That season ends in a loss to the eventual champion San Antonio Spurs, but Damian Lillard hits a series-clinching 3 against the Rockets, one of the great moments of the last 20 years in Blazers history. But the other thing the Blazers did, and I think this is an underrated thing, and particularly for my younger listeners probably don't appreciate this as much, is that they added Robin Lopez. Robin Lopez changed the game. Robin Lopez is, maybe not thought of as this like elite starting center, and he wasn't, but he was perfect for what the Blazers needed. The massive upgrade over J.J. Hickson the previous season. But they needed, and like Myers Leonard wasn't ready, and Joel Freeland wasn't ready. Those dudes aren't starting centers and never were. So like you add Rolo, and it allowed them to change some of their defensive principles. They started mimicking the defensive principles that had made teams like the San Antonio Spurs and the Celtics elite defensive teams. Right? They said, okay, we're going to play this drop coverage. We're going to chase you over the top. We're going to keep you off the 3-point line and try to force mid-range jumpers. And they finally had a big that was capable of defending the rim, of being large in the middle. And Rolo changed the complexion of the team. They were, for a brief period, two consecutive seasons, an awesome defensive team. Before Wesley Matthews got hurt the following season, the Blazers were a top 5 defense. They were really good, and Rolo transformed it. So the 2 ways that they've made their biggest jumps in franchise history, a 20-win increase and a 21-win increase. The first one, new coach, trade for an all-star, nail a draft pick. The second one, let your internal youth grow and get better, and add a perfect role player that complements your stars. Allows LaMarcus Aldridge to be LaMarcus Aldridge, fixes some of the defensive challenges, allows you to be big up front, fixes some of the defensive challenges that playing with Damian Lillard would suggest that you're going to have. Make the roster make sense, allow the young players to get better. 21 more wins. Whatever the Blazers do this summer, this iteration of the Blazers in the summer of 2025, they have to get better, right? You don't get to win 35 to as many as 37 games and announce that you made it. Although this season has been rewarding for many reasons. They have not arrived. They have, I guess they're at the train station at this point. They've at least located where the train is out of town. If they're going to head to whatever's next in the big shining city of postseason success, they got to get a little bit better. For my money, the obvious path is the summer of 2013. You let the young players marinate and get better, and you nail some role player acquisitions. The Blazers need a little bit more shooting. They probably need another guard who can facilitate, depending on what happens with Anthony Simons. They need depth at basically every position. Maybe not center, depending on the future of DeAndre Ayton, but I think they need to fortify their depth just across the board if they're going to be highly competitive. They could use help basically at every spot, and they need more shooting. They need more playmaking. They need a little bit more just sort of like individual shot creation, advantage creation off the dribble. Can you find all of those things in one player? Probably not. But can you make some smart, sort of low-level Robin Lopez acquisitions and then bank on the improvement of your young players to take a summer of 2013-like step forward? Maybe. You don't have a LaMarcus Aldridge, but you have some talented vets like Denny Avia who could prop up the right type of role players. And if multiple young players, not just Dame, but if multiple young players on this particular roster take that step forward, maybe you're cooking with something. If you're looking back to make moves to jump into another tier from no good to good, you don't sit still, but you don't necessarily need to swing for the fences and acquire an all-star. You can do it other ways. And I think those two summers, the summer of 89, the summer of 2013, illustrate two possible paths. The rest of the summer, the season's going to end. I'll do my season wrap-up on Monday's program, be in your feeds on Sunday evening. Next time you hear my voice, the Blazers will have played their final two games of the regular season, and that's what we'll do. But the rest of the summer, we're going to focus on what's next. So I wanted to do this as kind of a table setter, right? The draft, some trades, free agency, but not really because the Blazers don't have any money, and free agency is not the way. You add role players in free agency, right? You don't make very rarely, and particularly this summer's crop of free agents is going to be game changers in free agency. But there are moves to be made, and the Blazers are in need of continuing to upgrade the roster. So that's this is your table setter for what's next for the next months. This show's 5 days a week until friggin' August, right? We are merely getting started with 4 months of a long NBA offseason. The Blazers have to get better, and I hope these two ideas, the summer of 89, the summer of 2013, give you a vision of what better might look like. Tell your friends about the program. Tell them we'll keep rolling along all summer long. One thing Locked On Blazers is afraid, baby. 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts. Also on YouTube. Come back next week. We'll do it again because it's what we do each week. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.